Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Restoring Our Cities podcast. My name is Jobin, and we got a great group of guys here talking about social justice today. We're really excited to just get into the conversation. And if you are new to the Restoring Our Cities podcast, this is our format where we get to connect with just our listeners and provide unfiltered conversations on today's topics that are really impacting our generation. And there's just a lot going on. But let me go around the room real quick just to kind of connect with the guys. How's
What a year.
2020 treating you, Toby Kurian?
Same as everybody, man. It's been kind of strange, just being indoors all the time. We're in New York. Those of you who don't know, we got hit the hardest, in the beginning. And then we're one of those states that kind of stayed in lockdown for a long time. So, um, you know, things are opening up, yes, but not everything. They're very very cautious about it, which is a good thing. I feel like the data shows that we kept the numbers down, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're okay with safety and health.
I
Um,
I am very very okay with safety and health.
no, you know what? I think that's a great point, and I haven't caught up with you guys in a while, which I really love this format. We get to hang out again. I know the pandemic is crazy, so Steve, how's things in Detroit too? How are you guys dealing with things over there?
Yeah, things are good given the circumstances, I guess. I mean, like Toby was saying, I mean, Michigan's, I'm sure you heard on the news too, it's like one of the hardest hit states as well. And we were in shutdown for a long time. When you hear from different people if the numbers are coming back up or not, but we're still seeing, people going out, restaurants and things like that. And schools are opening at the same time. And everyone's going back to like a new virtual type classroom setting and things like that. So it's just, courts and work and employment and all that's all virtual now too. So a lot of
Yeah,
virtual,
a lot of virtual.
a lot
That's
of virtual reality.
yeah, that's true. It is virtual reality. Strange.
Yes, that's what he said. Virtual reality.
I can just picture Sibby with a headset on everywhere he
I
goes, and
know.
people are like,
He's like big goggles.
isn't isn't everyone wearing Oculus goggles?
"Are we in the Matrix right
Guys, I've
now?"
been in shutdown for a long time.
Man, I keep forgetting. I mean, I feel like this is the new normal with this pandemic, and I kind of feel like it's this is just how it is. Zoom. This is how I talk to people through Zoom, which is kind of crazy. So, Joel, how's things going on your end?
For me personally, just still trying to get used to the norm. Normally, I'd be traveling right now within the
Mm.
U.S. and then actually I should be in India right now, and usually I would be in India at least twice a year, and but obviously that's been canceled, and then a lot of appointments in the U.S. has been canceled. So it's been tough because just I'm a guy who's used to meeting people in person and being out of the home. My wife, she loves the fact I'm home more often now, but definitely a new norm. And then Zoom is just my life. I have staff meetings on Zoom, Bible studies on Zoom, church on Zoom, podcast on Zoom too. So
What are you trying to
it's
say?
been pretty crazy.
A lot of Zoom.
We got to be a little original, Jobin. I mean, just kidding. No, but 2020, it's been crazy, but we're pressing on, and just there's a lot of hope.
Alvin, how's life for you in coronavirus 2020?
It's going good. It's very busy still. I have to go into work every day, so Monday through Friday. So that part of it's kind of normal, but just the day-to-day operations of like you got to wear a mask before you even walk into the building, and it's kind of a little bit more stressful, but so far so good. I mean, we're managing, you know what I mean? So it's all right.
Yeah.
Definitely better off than a lot of people, so I'm definitely thankful about that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about all the people in healthcare, and I know we know a lot of folks, our family, friends, spouses, who work in the healthcare field. Just nuts that it's been going on this long, right? So yeah, glad everybody's staying safe and healthy. It's just been an absolute bonkers 2020. We're recording this in August, and I thought this was going to be done in like a month, but no,
Mhm.
several months later. It's crazy. It's still going on. And I think in the midst of that, just not only dealing with a worldwide pandemic, it's like we're in the midst of this crazy um, situation with, racial tension, just the fight for social justice and equality and, protests springing up all over the place. I mean, and, I live in Chicago, being in the city, we're seeing things just left and right all day, every day. The bridges are up, preventing people from coming in downtown and stuff like that. So it's really hitting close to home on like what's happening, the climate. So I kind of wanted to talk about that today because it's such a important issue, and I feel like it's becoming more vocalized within our community too, within our brown community, our church community, work community, literally you name it. Any group of people you talk with, this is one of those things that they have very strong opinions on. Um, I think before we even jump into the conversation, I just want to say I'm not an expert before you roast me on Twitter. So, I think one thing that,
Roast him.
yes, flames all over the place. It's one of those things where I want to get educated. I feel like I could always learn something from a conversation. And so I'm really glad to get everybody's perspective here too. So, with social justice, what does that mean to you? What's the climate that's happening right now in our country? What does that mean to you guys?
Basically, my thoughts on social justice are that it's very important, right? But I think it's also very nuanced because there are obviously, like with any major issue, there's always like a for and against side, and seemingly like important views on each. So even like just any kind of statement is bound to offend someone or encourage someone else. But ultimately, I think as Christians, like we have to be for social justice, right? And it's the nuance part is how do we enact that? How do we like go about doing that? And I think that's kind of where you get a lot of the debate between like obviously like the big controversies like what Black Lives Matter organization versus Black Lives Matter as a statement versus there's a lot of like I think in business we call them like we build silos, and so we're building silos of like I'm either on this team or on that team, but in reality like we should all kind of be kind of together on like the core values or ideals of what we're talking about. Like obviously Black lives do matter, right? Like I think everyone does believe that,
Right.
but then part of it may also be like we are quick to be offended and quick to like judge and say, oh, what about this and this, and we're very reactionary versus kind of like being willing to listen and say, all right, well, I want to hear your viewpoint, even if I disagree. What do you have to say and where are you coming from? And then I think that's where we kind of find a sort of middle ground, if that makes sense. But yeah.
No, I think you bring up a lot of really great points. It's like one of those, on face value, of course, social justice. Who would be against that, right?
Yeah,
You'd be
right,
weird
yeah.
to be against it. But then it gets really polarizing as we dive into the details. But Toby, like you're in New York, like such a melting pot of of society and culture. Like, what are you hearing? What's kind of the scuttlebutt about social justice? I just want to use that word. Sorry.
That's good. It's the same thing everywhere, I think. It's very, very important right now, and not right now, but it's important. But something that Alvin said, I just want to kind of touch on that is, yes, I think in general, most people care about Black Lives Matter, the statement, right? But in general, but there's so many pockets of the country and the world that doesn't think so. That thinks the other side, like they don't care. So I think that's what's really coming up in up front right now in the media and just like everyday life. So I think we have to be careful in generalizing anything, including what you really deeply care about and you think is absolutely right. Like Alvin was saying, there's always two sides of things. People who are looking from the outside, I think we have to be very careful, and we have to be very factual in what we say, because I feel like a lot of us go into things with emotion rather than facts. And not to say that there shouldn't be emotion. There is emotion when people are being killed on the street or people, families are being torn apart. Like you need emotion, but I think at the end of the day, we have to look for what the truth is.
Facts are always a good thing, right? Like facts, real news, that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I feel like it's so important. How's Detroit dealing with just this topic?
Not an expert in Detroit either, or even in my own opinion, I think, on this topic. Just disclaimer. But um, I think it's hard for Detroit as a whole, being predominantly populated with African Americans or black people, right? And it's touching the inner city and then also suburbs a lot on both sides. I think even with the political ties and then also with socio-economical type impacts that have been just occurring, particularly in 2020, it's just so difficult to digest what's really happening in Detroit or even what's happening in this state as a whole, because there's just you hear so many different sides of it based on each town. So we have like a city here and like the next adjoining city isn't even like on the same mindset or the frame of mind when it comes to social justice, and it's like it's not that far, it's like a mile apart, and you have left and right wing like just so close together. I think generally with social justice in Michigan, 2020 is a very major year, I think, in the world for it, but it's definitely opened my eyes to important factors that maybe we've allowed ourselves to just kind of turn a blind eye to for a long time. And this has been a year of basically checking myself and making sure like I stay true to my own beliefs, because like we say, like, yeah, we do believe it, or we can all agree that social justice is important in general and not just now. And that's been a topic in my life for the past like 10 years, but I'm not living it out necessarily every day for the past 10 years. It'd be a lie if I were to say that.
Yeah.
Just being on a podcast today doesn't mean I was gun-ho and willing to share my thoughts or feelings like a month ago, or protest or walk in a march a month ago. It's awesome to have something like this where we can share our thoughts and talk to you guys who actually do care about these things, and to kind of right our ways or right our wrongs when it comes to certain topics. But social justice is definitely important. It's definitely something our community should be looking to try to help out where we can, where that discussion is heading towards.
No, it's important, and it's obviously important everywhere, and that's kind of why I really like this podcast, because we have people everywhere, right? In the city, in the suburbs, in different states, in different contexts. And Joel, I know you obviously work a lot with international ministries and working with India and things like that. Well, what are you hearing on your end? I guess just as far as a topic, is it important in your social circles and maybe the people you work with? Or what are you hearing?
I can agree with you all that social justice is very important, especially from an international perspective. Definitely different what's going on here in America. In regards to human trafficking, child labor laws being broken. It's just a whole different ballgame. But just thinking on the term, and I really loved how Alvin really explained it, because it has so many different meanings. And we're living in a time where we're afraid to really take a stand, because the moment you take a stand, there's an assumption that you're against everything else. So for example, just saying they're a Christian, now the moment you kind of say that, there's an assumption that you hate people or you don't agree or accept certain acts and beliefs. And then even with, as you touched on, like Black Lives Matter, of course, Black Lives Matter. But there are a lot of Christians afraid to even say that because they don't want to represent the organization. So there's a lot of growing and to be educated about those terms. And so I can say, like, 2020, as hard as it is, and it is, I think there's going to more chaos is yet to come, but it really challenged me personally, and I think it challenged the church to take a step back and actually lament what's going on, and get educated. I know personally, I have been educating myself on these terms, like, what does social justice mean? What does justice actually mean? What does the Bible say about justice? So again, I'm not no expert in all this, but the craziness that's been taking place in 2020 has challenged me personally, and I believe the church to really take a step back and educate themselves because as Sibi said, we need to practice what we're preaching. We need to practice what we believe. And so if we believe in social justice, what does that look like as a church, as Christians, just as human beings?
Isn't that crazy? You said something so interesting, and I agree with you. But as Christians, once we're identified as Christians or reveal ourselves as Christians, we're kind of associated with hatred, and that's like exactly the opposite of what the Bible teaches.
Exactly, and it's sad because it's certain Christian leaders who misrepresent Christianity, and their voice, their opinions is what becomes the face of Christianity, where what they're preaching and teaching is the total opposite, and so it's pretty sad.
But can I throw another curveball in there? I mean,
Please.
if we want to be honest, like, do you feel like that's because it's a label put on folks because you don't agree with me, so now I'm going to paint everybody who disagrees with me as a racist? And that just so happens to be Republican or Christians, because now, like, you look at people who are identifying as Republicans, it's the devil now. I don't know if it's always clear cut, because I feel like people are getting labels slapped on them. I'm just going to throw that out there to see what you guys think.
I think that's tough. Like, even Republican and Democratic, that's what I was saying. I used the words that I did when I was referring to Michigan as a state, just liberal versus conservative, because it's hard to just pick one, right? Like, when you go to vote and there's an option that says, oh, you can just pick all Republican if you want, and I just feel like that's just so lazy. But it's an option to just say, yeah, I'm Republican, and whatever all these people think, even if it's not exactly what I'm in tune with, just because they're Republican, I can identify with that, right? And I can choose that label to be my banner. And what do we now, as this generation, or like as a church that we live in now, and that's just a concept that I'm thinking about even just now. Like, so like, what do we create as that label, or how do we show our label or our banner that we're supposed to fly? Like,
yeah, it just feels like the climate is like, man, you said this, or you were critical of this aspect, boom, label, right?
That's it. Well, and that's social media, right? You either like it or you don't.
True.
Exactly.
You either scroll past it or you can save it.
Yeah.
You could dislike it or like it on Facebook. Like, there's no in between. Like, where's the flatline emoji where I'm like, I'm not sure yet.
I mean, but that's so true, because the moment you like a post or a picture, you're automatically labeled. And so if you liked, I know people who, they don't identify themselves as Democrats or Republicans, but they may follow certain Democrats because they believe in that particular leader. And they also follow some Republicans because they follow that particular person, but unfortunately, social media doesn't view it that way. So the moment you like something or commented something, the audience automatically labeled you as a Republican, Democrat, or a racist, or anti-Christian.
It's like this trend of like people unfriending you or blocking you. Like, what are we in, third grade? Like, seriously? What happened there? Like, you're not my friend anymore. Like,
actually, that's a good point, because I remember I saw, and I wouldn't obviously say who the name was, but I saw an individual who had a level of like influence, kind of put up a post saying, anyone who agrees with this certain leader, go ahead and unfriend me. You and I have nothing you and I have nothing in common. It's not even worth it. Just basically saying like, I'm saving you the trouble of being offended because I'm not going to like anything that you like. And then, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, and there's no way we're going to find a middle ground. And I thought about that, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the approach, because you're kind of cutting yourself off from the people that, not to say you could learn from, but like, I mean, someone told me the other day, like, they kind of figured out that, like, oh, I know you're friends with certain people on Facebook specifically because they believe the complete opposite of what you believe. And it's just so that I can kind of get a little, like, tap on, like, oh, what are they really thinking? And, like, because sometimes I feel like I'm oblivious to, like, what the far ends of the spectrum are, from very conservative to very liberal. And, I don't really watch the news as often as I should because I'm too busy. So I don't have time to, like, entertain the Fox or the CNNs or whatever. So I don't know what crazy conspiracies are going on. And just kind of seeing the random...
You didn't know about the aliens, Alvin?
Yeah, I didn't even care.
The Fox?
You didn't hear about that?
No, I heard,
It's a real
I heard
thing
something
now.
about yeah, they confirmed. Yeah,
Like
I'm like, all right,
Independence Day. It was literally Independence.
I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to
I
finish.
love how that
Will
just
Smith was
passed
there.
too.
Yeah. Oh, and it goes quick. So
Crazy.
I think in a lot of ways, like if we're not willing to at least engage people we disagree with, or at least hear them out, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. Especially if we
But-
consider ourselves to be leaders and people who are people of influence. I mean, you're really kind of handicapping yourself. But yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
where do we engage them though? That's a big topic because if it's on social media, it gets out of
Oh, yeah,
hand
no.
pretty quick. I mean, and also maybe Joel, you could fill us in on this, but like, where does the church kind of engage? You know, in this whole thing, because right now it's just a bunch of guys on social media just fighting with each other about just anything and everything.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Because I know personally from our church, and I'm part of the pulpit team, and we discussed this because it is definitely something we need to address. But at the same time, I feel like sometimes the church just kind of joins a bandwagon and just becomes an expert. And I don't want to name names, but there are a lot of churches that drop the ball because they didn't do enough research and just kind of preach some nonsense, and it just really did more hurting than it was supposed to. But I know personally for our church, and I'm not saying our church is perfect, we really didn't know how to do it, and so we knew that we needed to take some time to kind of learn, educate ourselves. What is racism? What does it look like? How can I reach out to my brothers and sisters who have been affected by this? And so I think it's humbling to actually admit that you don't know, but then don't end it there. Obviously you need to learn, educate yourself, and then you need to create a space for that. You need to create a space in your small groups. I think having one-on-one conversations like through Zoom and having an honest conversations about it. But yeah, I totally agree with that. You shouldn't do it on social media because it's just you're gonna get attacked left and right, and it's just gonna miss the whole purpose.
And I mean, I think these are really great points, but I mean, not to. I do want to stir the boat a little bit, all right?
Mhm.
So I am, because I feel like, and I'm just gonna throw this out there. Overwhelmingly, we're talking about social media. We're talking about feeding the narrative. A lot of that is fed one way, right? Like if like one side dominates the media and pushes a narrative, is it really even possible for us to entertain the other side? Because then you don't see any facts. You know what I'm saying? Because like no matter what way you vote, if you do watch just Fox News or you just do watch CNN, like the truth to you is so different compared to the other side. And I think about it, Alvin, we had this podcast last season where we talked about the need for healthy dialogue, which was a really great conversation. If you guys want to go back and listen to that one, and some really good same concepts there, but like how do you do that? How do you digest truth in this crazy back and forth world where sometimes what you're living in, sometimes we have tunnel vision. How do you digest truth from that?
That's a major concern for me, to be honest, because I'm the type of person that will look at different types of news outlets like all over the world. Like, what is China reporting on this bomb, or that exploded, and what is BBC saying? And I'll like go out of my way to find that. But for my kid, who's like 2 right now, like he's gonna grow up and having to learn that not everything is truth, right? And how do I, as a parent, reveal that to him or show him that, like, yeah, Fox is like this way and CNN is this way, and you have to figure out in between like where you're going to be. But even when you're talking to people, because there are people that you may idolize or like that are influencers in your life, not just social media influencers, but who are maybe even like your young adults leader, like your youth group leader, who may have an opinion, or like your pastor who may have an opinion on something, and you have to sit back and discern and digest it and really, right? And that's like what we're called to do. But how do I know how to do that internally. How do I say that to my child? And that's a major concern for me lately, because I feel like everything we're fed through social media, particularly news outlets, is just jaded. It's one way or the other, right? And just same topic, what we're talking about. It's either you like it or you don't. It's either right or left. And there's no middle ground even the middle ground news outlets I saw, there was like a newspaper on social media that was like, hey, we try to uncover the truth. And it's like someone that's really naive will just follow that one source and not realize that maybe that's not even true, right? They're just trading that narrative. Then it comes down to like those producers or those people that are controlling those outlets control everything this world hears and sees.
Yeah, that's
So,
exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to edit this so that
right.
only what I believe is going to be. I'm just kidding. Kidding.
I mean, and Alvin's doing the audio. Alvin could just
Yeah.
mute us all.
Exactly.
It's just
Only
Alvin
Alvin
talking
all
the
the
entire.
I know. It's probably we're all muted right now. Actually, no, it's not being recorded.
We look like a bunch of mimes.
Alvin's just voiceovering each of us.
Right. No, it's
Right? Like they hold the power, so then it's just where do we? I mean, maybe I'm just feeding off your question to just ask it in a different way, but that is a huge concern for me. That is honestly like a major thing that I've been talking to various people over the past 3-4 months because it's a concern for my kid. He'll have to figure that out, and I'm almost afraid for him that he has to do that himself. Right?
yeah.
I think we all had to do that though, because I remember years back I was saying something to my older cousin. He's like, you know, maybe that's not true. I'm like, and I was just like, what do you mean it's not true? CNN reported it. And then that's like later on in life is when you like learn like, oh no, that was skewed to their narrative. Like you don't understand that.
Yeah.
But I think like early conversations with just kids in general, like that will knock that out because they'll start naturally being curious and asking questions, and you know then we can skew them into whatever we want to think. I'm just
Perfect.
kidding.
Right. Right.
Great point. I think part of it too is like, one thing that I've learned, through this, past couple months and what I've been seeing, and even at work, right? Like if I'm at work and I'm doing a project and somebody wants to report on the analytics, I'm going to pick the analytics that really showcase
Looks good.
the highlight of the project. Great. We were great. So I feel like what I've learned over the past couple months is everybody sucks at stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like America needs a stats course, right? Like,
Stats is fake news.
Yeah, that's the real fake news.
Yeah.
Fake news. Color
Yeah.
news.
Color news.
90% of statistics are made up on the spot.
yeah.
Wait a minute. Sibi,
Wait
you
a
made
second. Was
that
that
on
made
the
up?
spot.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
Dang
Tricking
it.
you.
Breaking
You
news from
almost had me
CNN
there.
right now. We just heard that 90% of stats. But you know what I mean? Because like when I talked, especially about this issue of racism, and when we talk about Black Lives Matter and things like that, I'm getting stats thrown my way. Like,
Mhm.
on Twitter or Instagram or somebody be like, hey, well, what do you think about this? Right. And here's the proportion of the population. And here is the total number of unarmed deaths. You know what I mean? And
That's a lot of work, man. Normal people are not going to do that. They're just going to
Yeah.
see what they kind of want to see, what make them feel good or bad or scared or angry or whatever they want to lean towards that day. They're going to take it. I think the most important thing is just having conversations on a very localized level, like you and I talking, or our small audience, like maybe listening to it, or whatever. I think it's just the way it is. It's just the way the world works. I think it's just too big and too powerful to control anything. Because narratives push, careers sometimes. Narratives push, wealth, and there's just too many factors in this world. I think the most we could do is seek out information as much best as we possibly can, and then maybe lay off some of the information that's being put out there, where you feel like it's too skewed to one side or the other, because nobody knows really exactly what's going on. The best we could do is be informed and make good decisions as adults, and kind decisions. I think I guess it all kind of all goes back to what would Jesus do.
I think that's a great point. And I sometimes we do have to look at things on an individual level, but also systematically as well. And then there are some places where we need change. how do you guys feel about people's response to injustice? There's some things that we can do and maybe ideas that we've had, but then there's also things that society has chosen to do. I'm just going to blanketly say it right now. Looting. There's protesting, there's looting. I totally understand that there's a difference, but I've heard a lot of perspectives, and I'm curious because I want to learn too, because I've actually, on face value, I'm like, looting, of course, that's bad. Why would you want to smash somebody's window and steal stuff? But then I've heard, sometimes violence and some of these kind of things are the only way to, promote change or really capture attention, right? Being in Chicago, the bridges are up. They're limiting access to downtown. It's chaotic down there, and I've seen some news reports and very conflicting reports. So how do you guys feel about society's response to these injustices, specifically about protesting and looting?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially with like looting, I think as a general term, obviously looting is bad, right? And then I think we're all for protesting, but the nuance of it is
I'm for looting, against protesting.
against protesting. Typical. No, I'm kidding.
That's really what his question
meant. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to be like we kind of discount the fact that there's still evil in the world. And follow me as I go with this. So that even though there's like a noble cause, and there are probably people who initially were protesting and then somehow looting came out of that, out of maybe a misguided idea that, oh, this is somehow our way to get retribution, or they're just so frustrated this is how they're acting out. I could potentially understand that. But on the other side of it, I know that there are people who could care less about the social justice matters, who are seeing looting and be like, sweet, that's my ticket. I'm going to go, basically bogart this movement and use it for my own purposes. And I think that is really what is like broadcast out in all the news outlets, and that's used as like a weapon to say like, see, this is why protesting is bad, this is why looting is bad, and trying to discredit the whole movement of social justice. So I think, especially as Christians, we have to sort of discern, okay, there's the potential for evil in any action, and we can't just say that's the only factor that's affecting this, right? So there are real people involved who, like, I think I heard one of my teacher friends say that they taught in like an inner city, and he said, I absolutely understand why individuals who are this oppressed would loot because they feel like they have no other option. And for people who don't have that kind of oppression, we could never understand that. But like, look at a little kid. If a bully is hassling a little kid and hassling him, and then all of a sudden the kid being bullied just like punches the bully in the face, and it's like, oh wow, you took it up a notch, that was unexpected. But in reality, it's like, well, no, like the kid was kind of stuck in a corner, you know what I mean? We have to kind of think about how all of that ties in with it. But as a general sense, obviously looting is bad, protesting is obviously okay, but we have to be careful in our response. That I think even some people said, oh, you care more about stores being broken than someone being killed, which is like, yeah, that's true. But that's also an unfair characterization, because there's also innocent lives that are affected by looting, and there's innocent lives that are affected by police brutality or systemic racism or any of those things. And so if we pick a singular side as our argument, I think we're always gonna have some fault in our logic, or basically whatever we're saying. So.
Great example.
Yeah, but
bullying is great. Bullying is okay, kids. Okay, according to Alvin Matthew, you can punch your bullies in the face.
Yeah,
thank you, Alvin.
Hit him back. Hit him hard.
That is the snippet we were going to share.
I was going to say, I think it's tough because looting isn't necessarily deep-rooted, right, or systematic. It's not like this long-going issue of looting in our country. That's not like the issue. Like that should be addressed in a lot of ways. And I do get looting. I understand that, because like Alvin was saying, you get to a point where you're backed up against a wall, and what are you going to do? And you're going to lash out. And that's what you see right now, is lashing out. And a lot of people on one side are going to address that lashing out instead of what's causing the lashing out in the first place. And so that causes further lashing out. Right, and I'm just saying what everyone knows. It's just a matter of, if you really want to address the lashing out, why not address first the cause of the lashing out? Because that's really going to solve an issue. social worker perspective, when you're working with families and kids and things like that, you're going to go to the root cause or the root issue as opposed to what they're saying even right now. Because what they're saying right now is easy to go with that narrative, right? And sit there and say, well, don't punch, don't bully, don't do this. When maybe even in that certain scenario, the kid is on food stamps and his parents aren't even around and he's having a tough time. Both of them, maybe the bully and the kid that punched him, right? And it's like this deep root, like what is the real heart issue that's going on in society right now that we as a church perspective maybe, or we as just this generation should be addressing, right? And if that is social injustice that we're seeing, isn't that where we come in and stand behind and say, you know what, I do support that, and I get that there's looting and stuff, but my mind's willing to turn a blind eye to that to a certain degree. Not to say that they're right and justified in it,
Right.
but to sit back and say, you know what, fix this, and we will address that.
And I think talking about the heart issues is really where we have to focus our efforts. And Toby, probably as somebody who's been bullied over your lifetime many times, I'm sure.
Never getting a punch in on your bully.
I mean, how do you feel about this? You've worked at Lord and
Oh,
Taylor as a jean specialist. I mean,
Oh man.
Every episode.
I'm
Every
sorry.
episode.
Punch him,
I
Toby,
am-
punch him.
So if you haven't subscribed, this is what you're missing.
Are there like virtual punches on this?
Virtual.
I was just reading a book from Malcolm Gladwell about the tipping point where it talks about
Broken window theory,
broken
right?
window theory.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
Cool theory.
yeah, I mean, in the sense of like, is that even really true? Like, broken window theory, in a nutshell, was just what? Hey, if I clean up some of the minor offenses, maybe that's what's going to help resolve crime, right? If I clean up graffiti and really start policing some of those areas, that's where we're going to start to reduce crime in certain areas. If I start to solve the minor things, right, then it's going to solve some of the major things. Which, is that true or not? I don't know. I've heard
Is
a lot
that
of,
like Batman?
apparently. Yeah, Batman's just out there cleaning graffiti.
Solving petty crime.
Yes.
I guess I could more speak on Chicago than even here because it's been so quiet here. It's really sad to see, because obviously we all have such a deep rooted love for Chicago and the downtown. Whenever somebody comes into the city, that's all we talk about, right? So it's really heartbreaking for me to see all those places being looted and destroyed, and it's really sad. But what's even sadder is 5 or 6 miles south of there, in the south side of Chicago, Inglewood, Garfield Park, you name it. So do I condone this and say I'm absolutely like not okay, okay with this? Yeah, I'm not okay with the looting, but I'm not also okay with what's going on, a few miles away from there either. So to say that, property matters and this and that, as Christians, I don't know if property really matters, but as an American, yeah, you get it because it's tied to your economy and your jobs, and you see certain people. Like for me, for example, like I worked with some of those retail stores that have been looted, and that's really heartbreaking because I know some of those owners. I don't know them personally, but I know a lot of the employees, and we worked with them before, and etc. That's really tough on them, because they really try to do good for the community. So, it's a sad situation in both sense. And again, like I just don't know where I exactly stand, but I know that there needs to be some major fixing on the human side of things, which is the Chicago that's impoverished and
Oh yeah.
has to deal with poverty.
Yeah, and even just to add on that a little bit, I think it's when we talk about looting, we have to also address that. Like for instance, where like Joby and I grew up, we have a pretty decent mall here. We actually shut down our suburb, which is about 20 miles away from the city, And the reason they shut it down wasn't because that we were afraid of protests coming, but there were people that strategically said, okay, we're going to hit Orland Park, we're going to hit Naperville, we're going to hit all these places with Apple stores.
That's wrong. Right.
And like clearly that's wrong. And
Right.
that's, really bogarting this movement of like looting, right? And so it's very challenging because I hear people in our neighborhood saying like, it's very easy to lump all of that together and say, oh, well, like, and granted, probably the percentage of people that are looting out of sheer oppression is probably a lot less. Sure. But I think it's still something we have to address. That, look, if you are, if they've gotten to the point of where they believe it's okay to loot, then obviously there are serious issues that led them to that point.
Yeah. A healthy response to talking about these societal issues and protesting and things like that, I feel like are really important. And I think I don't want to take away the value of protesting itself and marching downtown and the peaceful protests, predominantly peaceful protests, right? I think that's so important, where we need to really take a look at that and say, hey, there's actual change happening. Share your feedback, drop a comment, or direct message us and let us know what you think. And we'd love to continue that conversation, because I think this is a really important topic. And then, for us as, Christians, or if you really just believe in fighting for justice, which I think every sane, decent human being should probably do. I think from what we talked about, that's not really the crux of the issue. I feel like when you get into the nuances, that's when you start to get the debate and the healthy dialogue. And thank you guys for joining us. If you haven't already subscribed, what are you doing? What's your problem? Subscribe, follow us on Spotify, on Anchor, on Apple Podcasts. You can watch the video broadcast of this, the video recording of the video podcast. It's the radio. Turn to dial. You can watch the video version of this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Just check out our website. Everything is there at restoringourcity.org. So thanks again for joining us, guys. Alvin, Toby, Joel, Sibby, thank you guys for joining. And we will continue this talk on our next episode. Thanks, guys.